future. All right, guys. Now let's get down to some Packers talk here. All right, let's talk about the potential replacement for Jeff Hafley. Okay, and here's what I want to do here. I want to kind of lay some ground rules and explain. If you guys are in the Patreon group, you already got this information. It's one of the perks of being in our Patreon group. Again, you can join that by going to patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access. $3 get you access to everything, all the articles we put up, all the information we put up. I'm not writing articles going, let me tell you how Clayton feels today. I just don't do that. I don't try to get wordy or anything. I'm getting you snapshots, screenshots, important information. We're building draft boards. We're basically kind of walking you along. The reason we call it Packers Total Access is as fans, we try to view the information through the lens, through the eye of the team, even though we're fans, almost like how the 33rd team does. You know, they're called the 33rd team because it's like they took a group of former executives, former coaches, former players, and created a company, essentially a media group that kind of talks about how they would handle things and their perspective. Well, that's kind of how we look at this. Our Patreon group and the show in general is us bouncing ideas off of each other, us going through the important data, right? That's what you get in our Patreon group, essentially. You get access to all the chats as well. But let's dive into the potential candidates here. And this is exciting. Anybody throws any super chats in, I will make sure I read them at the end. I promise I will not forget them. We greatly appreciate all the support you guys always provide. So you'll notice in the screen grab here, guys, we've got Sean McDermott, okay? Or is it Scott? I don't even know his name now. Sean McDermott. You've got Raheem Morris and you've got Brian Flores, okay? Now, what we're going to do is lay out some ground rules. Here are the potential coordinators that the Packers might be interested in. Now, this doesn't mean they're my favorite. I didn't comprise a list 1 through 15 and go, I like this guy the most, that guy the most, that guy the most. Just like our draft board. Our draft board isn't my opinion of me watching the tape. I'm not going to sit over and try to pretend like I'm a guru and breaking down a prospect. And, man, I really like his footwork, but his hip swivel is a little off. That ain't what we do here. There's so much information here in 2026 that you can take the guys and gals that you trust the most that's providing their take, their opinion on someone, and we can kind of use it in a database and come up with who we think the favorites are, especially with our draft board. In this case, I'm going to tell you what I think is important to me. And it's kind of in the order of importance, I guess you could say. I'm going to zoom in here. Hopefully you guys can see this okay. Maybe not. Let's see. I think we got it. All right, there we go. So here is how this is sorted. First of all, I think it's important, if at all possible, to hire a defensive coordinator who has head coaching experience. Okay, that's something that I really think is valuable. And the reason being is if you're a head coach and you're hiring a defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator, wouldn't you like to have somebody that knows what it's like to be in your shoes? You know, it's one of those things that, like, in today's society, it seems like we value a degree from a college more than we do on the job training type thing, right? Like, someone could go to school and get a degree, and I'm not anti-school. If that's you guys, hey, that's cool. I'm high school educated, right? I'm a business owner. We run 5 businesses, operate 5 businesses, and I didn't go to business school. I didn't do none of that. But what I did have an opportunity to do is work for 2 business owners when I was very, very young, 18 years old, in the city of Knoxville down here in Tennessee. And I got to kind of watch them operate a business as an employee. They took me under their wing. And then when I ended up going on into another field, I was able to take that experience. And you know what I did? I looked at it through the eyes of, okay, the job that I'm working right now, which I got into concrete and steel construction. I won't bore you with too much of the details, but I was looking through it through the lens of, what does this employer need from me? If I was the owner, if I was in his shoes, what would I need me to do, if that makes sense? My employees, right? My right-hand man, my whatever it is. That's why I think it's important to have a DC that's got head coaching experience. It doesn't mean you have to hire one like that, right? You know, obviously, Jeff Hafley had head coaching experience at Boston College, but he didn't have head coaching experience in the NFL, and he was great. So it's not like it's something that determines whether someone's good or not, right? But again, top priority on this list, head coaching experience by the amount of experience. And if any of this information's wrong, you guys do your own research. Again, I had AI comb through and grab the data for us. So if you see a mistake, just call it out. I see the super chat, Mike. Thank you, buddy. We'll hit that here at the end, man. So head coaching experience first. Second is going to be NFL defensive coordinator experience. So I want someone potentially that's already been in that role. And they probably came away and going, man, I wish I'd have done that different. I should have done this different, kind of learning on the job, that type of thing, right? And then, of course, third is college defensive coordinator experience. Something else I didn't have it sort by, but you'll notice I mentioned NFL playing experience as well. It's not sorted by that, but I want to kind of know on these potential candidates, did they ever play at the NFL level? Because I'm telling you, it's not everything. But when you've played at the NFL level, it's a lot easier for you to go to a player on the sideline and tell him, we need you to do this. And he's going to go, all right, he's been there. He's done that at the highest level. Maybe I need to listen to him, as opposed to someone who maybe hasn't played. Again, if you're a good leader, that might not matter, right? But when you take everything into consideration, I think that could be a huge asset in terms of motivating players, right? So let's go through the list. Number one on the list, Sean McDermott. Again, these aren't my favorites. I'm not saying they would be the best fit for the job. This is simply, these are guys who've had NFL head coaching experience, defensive coordinator experience, and then a college DC experience. Okay, so here we go. Sean McDermott, 51 years old. Age matters too, right? Connectivity as well as longevity. Okay, he's 51 years old. He has 9 seasons of experience as an NFL head coach, 8 seasons as an NFL defensive coordinator. Okay, his scheme, a 4-3 base that matches what our roster is built for right now. Although you guys know we're in nickel the majority of the time. We were playing hybrid fronts anyway. That didn't get talked about enough. There were some times that we were playing like a somewhat of a 34 hybrid in our base, where we would play like a 4-3 under, and then we would have one of our edge defenders playing the stack backer role on the Sam side. We would mix a little bit of that in. What that is, guys, a 34 jam. That's what it is, right? So again, sometimes you can get too caught up in that. You're going to be in your nickel defense a large majority of the time, which is, basically ours is a nickel 2-4-5, or I'm sorry, a nickel 4-2-5, which is pretty common across the league as well, right? So 4-3 base. NFL playing experience, according to our data, and again, if any of this information is wrong, let us know in the chat. 0 years in the NFL, okay? But again, 9 years as a head coach, 8 as the DC. Number 2 on the list, Raheem Morris, 49 years old, so he's 2 years younger than McDermott. He had 4+ seasons as an NFL head coach, okay? I don't know if that's accurate. I want to say it was 3. You guys double check that. 4 seasons as an NFL defensive coordinator. His scheme is a multiple front. Again, I'm not overly concerned with a multiple front. We were kind of already running that a little bit anyway. NFL playing experience is listed as 0 years. All right. Next on the list, Brian Flores, 44 years old. So 5 years younger than Raheem Morris. 3 seasons experience as an NFL head coach, 3 seasons as an NFL defensive coordinator. And you're going, wait, wasn't he the DC at the Patriots? No, he was one of, Belichick did a good job of holding on to coaches as much as he could. And he was very, very strategic. In some years, he wouldn't even have a defensive coordinator. He would intentionally do that, and he may pay him like a defensive coordinator. But as soon as the team came calling, then he'd go, I'm going to promote him to DC now. Like that was a way he kind of built a loophole in the system. And maybe that's changed since then. Brian Flores, NFL playing experience, according to this, 0 years. Okay, so far, all these head coaching candidates have not played in the NFL. All right. So 3 seasons as a head coach, 3 as a DC, and the Vikings defense this year, I'm going to try to keep this pulled up if I can remember to do it. They were dominant this year. And keep in mind, these defenses, some people would say, actually, I think, let's see if, here we go. Mike Superman, I'll go ahead and hit it because it kind of applies. He said, I wouldn't hire Morris to clean toilets in Lambeau. All right. Now, and I seen your comment earlier, Mike, in the chat. You're saying their defense sucked in Atlanta, right? Here's the thing. If we're using that as a prerequisite, then guess what? Jeff Hafley should have never been the defensive coordinator because their defense sucked at Boston College. They were like in the 40 to 50 range in terms of college football rankings and defense, right? Some stats might have been a little bit higher. But you got to be careful with that because, again, we're hiring a defensive coordinator, not a defensive-minded head coach. So when you just take the numbers from when someone was a head coach, you got to be careful when it's just a DC or an OC. Like Matt LaFleur's numbers in Tennessee were horrible. He's had a top 10 offense every year that he's been here, right? So you got to kind of take all that stuff into consideration as well. But I think it's safe to say Mike Hebring does not want Raheem Morris as the head coach. Thank you for the super chat, bub. Next on the list, Bill Davis. You're going, who? Snoop drop. Who? Bill Davis. 60 years old, okay? 0 seasons as an NFL head coach. He had 7 seasons as an NFL defensive coordinator. His scheme, however, it's showing as a 34 base. Again, they may have run multiple. They may have switched to 4-3 at some point, but it's saying on the surface level, 34 base. Playing experience, 0. He spent time in training camp with the Dolphins, but never played in a regular season game. And this was supposed to list out the teams that these are with. Just a quick little spoiler alert. What I did was comb through the top assistants for Seattle, Houston, and Denver, the top 3 defenses in the league. Okay, so most of these names are coming from that. I want to say Bill Davis was Seattle, but you guys do your own research there. Just another one to kind of keep an eye on, okay? The problem there, though, 60 years old. Here's the other thing, though. What do we talk about, with Matt LaFleur? He could use, a right-hand man that's got more experience than him, that type of thing, right? So with that being said, do you want an older DC? Would you rather have a younger DC? But nonetheless, Bill Davis, no head coaching experience. So really the only 3 candidates that's had head coaching experience that might potentially come to Green Bay. Keep in mind, Brian Flores is probably going to get a head coaching job. I think he was odds-on favorite to get one of 3 jobs, at least one of those 3 jobs. All 3 of them, he was the favorite to get the head coaching job in. So just keep it in mind, he probably won't be available. Maybe the case will be said for Sean McDermott. I know that someone had leaked out information. There were several teams that were already booked up, but they want to get Sean McDermott in for interviews. They're interested in him as a head coach. We'll see. So both of those, they might not even be available. But again, those 3 candidates with head coaching experience, Sean McDermott, Raheem Morris, Brian Flores. Bill Davis, no head coaching experience. However, been around the game a long time. He's 60 years old. Next on the list would be an internal promotion / hire. That's Derek Ansley, 44 years old, 0 seasons as an NFL head coach, 1 season as an NFL DC. He was Brandon Staley, I think was his name, if I remember correctly, was the head coach with the Chargers, and Derek Ansley was his defensive coordinator. Now, it did not go well, right? But, it is what it is. 2 seasons as a college DC. He ran a 34/multiple scheme. So, again, you look at Derek Ansley's been in Green Bay for a couple of years now, right? And a part of Jeff Hafley's hiring, his background was 34 multiple. Okay, although he is a secondary coach, he did not play in the league according to our information here. All right, next on the list, Corey Undlin, if I'm saying the name correctly. No head coaching experience, 1 as an NFL defensive coordinator, 2 seasons as a college DC, scheme 4-3 multiple, no NFL playing experience. Again, these are one of these coaches that's come from either Seattle, Houston, or Denver, the top 3 defenses in the league. So listen for or look and do some research on Corey Undlin. Next, another in-house potential candidate here, DeMarcus Covington, 36 years old. That I don't know if that's right, guys. Could somebody confirm that for me? Is he really only 36 years old? That's wild to think about. I knew he was young, but I didn't know he was 36. That's wild. So DeMarcus Covington, he's already getting interviews, right? I think he interviewed for the defensive coordinator spot in Dallas. So they're already showing some interest in him. Okay. 36 years old, never been a head coach, 1 as an NFL defensive coordinator. That was with the New England Patriots under Jerod Mayo. That whole staff got canned after a horrible season. Packers swooped him up, made him their defensive line coach, and he did a phenomenal job, I feel like, last year. I really did. When everybody was kind of healthy and everything was humming, I feel like the defensive line did get a little bit better, although he did add Micah Parsons, and obviously that helps as well. So his scheme, multiple. Again, that was the Belichick approach. They play 4-3 one week, and the next week they play a 34. Then they'd slip into a 46 bear, and then they'd come back to the 34. And then next thing you know, they were playing 4-3. They like to play predominant man, but if you'll remember, when they played in the Super Bowl against the Rams, they end up playing a wide 9 look with zone defense. Like, they mix and match all over the place. So really what you've got is a guy with DeMarcus Covington that came up through Bill Belichick's system of coaches, okay? They hired him very young. He was a former wide receiver, made the switch to defense, and he started at the bottom, worked his way all the way up. Obviously, Jerod Mayo was one of the right-hand men for Bill Belichick, and he's seen DeMarcus Covington as his right-hand man there as his DC. So DeMarcus Covington might be an in-house one. And you notice Derek Ansley up here. Again, these are in no particular order in terms of where we value them, just the experience in the league, if you will. Derek Ansley doesn't seem like he's gotten as much buzz as DeMarcus Covington. You guys correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but it just kind of feels like that, all right? Next on the list, Jeff Schmedding, if I'm saying it right, 48 years old, 0 seasons as an NFL defensive coordinator or head coach, 10 seasons as a college DC. Scheme is a 4-3 multiple, okay? and has no playing experience. I want to say Smedling came from Seattle, but I'm not 100% sure. You guys do your own research there. Next on the list, we've got our first former NFL player, and we talked about him the other day, and I was surprised at how many Packer fans said no to Jim Leonhard. No way. No, he turned us down before. We don't want him. Okay, cool. Did a poll question. Looked like about 77% of the fan base actually would love to have Jim Leonhard, former Wisconsin Badger, as their DC. Here is his short resume. 43 years old, never been a head coach, never been an NFL defensive coordinator. However, 6 seasons as a college DC or maybe somewhere in that range. He obviously was promoted to interim head coach at Wisconsin, where, if I remember correctly, they finished the season with a 4-3 run, I think it was, to get them into a bowl game. So he kind of finished strong there as an interim head coach. Obviously, Matt LaFleur, this was his top pick back in, I think it was 2021. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. When we hired Joe Barry, this was the top choice. He turned it down to go back to, I believe, Illinois State, I think it was, to do some work there. Then bounced back, came back to the league, and he has been now the secondary coach and passing game coordinator for the Denver Broncos, who were phenomenal this year. Okay. So Jim Leonhard, that's kind of his background. Scheme, 34 base, right? And that's kind of the Mike Pettin way of thinking, right? That old 34 system. NFL playing experience, 10 seasons. So he played 10 years in the league with the Bills, Ravens, Jets, Broncos, Browns. If I remember correctly, his connection with the Jets or with Mike Pettin was when Mike Pettin was with the Jets, I believe, if I remember correctly. So that was kind of the connection there. So he played for 5 different teams, 10-year career. Guys, that carries some weight with me. When I look at what the Broncos did this year, and when this name got brought up to me back in 2021, I was going, all right, guys, if he hadn't been a Wisconsin Badger, would we really want him, right? And many people really, really got upset with that. And that's cool. I understand you love your college football program. I get it. But my biggest knock was he has no NFL experience as a coach, right? Well, now he does, right? Now he's been a passing game coordinator for one of the best passing defenses in the league this year. And I think that is huge. So Jim Leonhard could be one of those guys, former NFL player. Again, think of your Dan Campbells, right? That's had a lot of success. I think we would agree. Think about these former players that have just stepped in and done a phenomenal job that you just tell players kind of gravitate to them. They know Jim Leonhard would take your damn head off on the football field. They know Jim Leonhard would sacrifice his body for his teammates. They know Jim Leonhard's, work ethic, all that stuff, right? So there's your first kind of motivator, if you will, right? Now, can he scheme up a defense? We don't know, right? He's never called plays. He's never built a game plan, that type of thing. So I'm a lot more excited about the potential of Jim Leonhard this time around. Now, there were rumors that Mike Pettin got in his ear and said, no, don't take the job with Matt LaFleur, because Mike Pettin and Matt LaFleur had a falling out when Matt LaFleur fired him, right? And he went on to hire, I think it was Joe Barry at that time. So I have not found any substantial proof that that was the case, okay? The only thing I found are write-ups where Jim Leonhard wanted to go back and work in college. Okay, so he didn't want to jump to the NFL, and he wanted to stay in college, and that's where he went as an analyst, I think, to Illinois State or Indiana State, wherever it was. You guys, I'm sure you know in the chat there. So Jim Leonhard, kind of appealing to me. Next, Kirk Olivadotti. Now, I think Kirk Olivadotti was on staff recently. I could be wrong. You guys correct me if I'm wrong there. It seems like I remember that name on the Packers staff. Maybe he was here with Joe Barry. I don't know. But no head coaching experience, no DC experience, no college DC experience. His scheme is a 34 base, has 0 playing experience. So you're seeing now, when you get down to the 10 mark, this kind of gets like, I don't know, why would we hire them? Again, there was nobody going into the hiring cycle going, hey, y'all ever heard of Jeff Hafley? You need to look into him. Now, when he emerged as a candidate, people got excited, right? But there was nobody that as soon as, hey, Joe Barry's fired, they said, go get me Jeff Hafley. It just didn't happen, right? They may claim it did, but show me the proof where you said that on day one when the firing happened. I remember. So, again, that's one of those things where it doesn't necessarily mean someone couldn't be a good coach, right? And, again, Jim Leonhard, 43 years old. Kirk Olivadotti is 52 years old. The scheme 34 base, maybe we don't like that, but Jim Leonhard would probably run a 3-4 base. Not that he couldn't run a 4-3 base, because in today's football, guys, in today's NFL, the way this kind of works for me And let me see. Yeah, here we go. I think I was right. Yeah, thank you, Drew. Good to see you, buddy. He says Olivedati was with the Packers for 4 years, inside linebacker coach. Got it, man. Got it. And I think he might be. Is he in Houston or Seattle? He's in one of those three teams: Houston, Seattle, or Denver. But nonetheless, that's a name maybe to keep an eye on, because obviously Matt LaFleur's got a little bit of experience with him. And some of these guys may be getting promotions. If, like, say, the DC in Seattle gets hired somewhere else, or Houston or Denver, then obviously, like Vance Joseph, once they're eliminated, if he gets a head coaching offer, then maybe, maybe Jim Leonhard gets promoted to DC. That could happen and block us from that as well. So there's going to be a lot of moving parts in that regard. Next on the list, Jeff Howard in the 11th spot, 43 years old. No experience at the NFL level, not even as a college defensive coordinator, according to this information. Scheme is multiple, didn't play in the NFL. Number 12, Dino Vasso, if I'm saying it right, 36 years old. So, again, just like DeMarcus Covington, 36 years old. No experience as a head coach or DC at any level. 4.3 base. That matches up a little bit. Didn't play in the league. Next on the list, Rod Wright, 41 years old. No experience as a head coach or coordinator at any level. 4.3 base, that matches. NFL playing experience, he played 4 years with the Miami Dolphins. So, again, 41 years old, played four seasons in the NFL. So we've got our second former NFL player on this list of 15 potential candidates. And yes, Steph, we actually covered, Stephanie just asked in the chat, is Flores an option? He is right now, unless he gets a head coaching job. We talked about him a few minutes ago, so you could go back and watch kind of the breakdown on him. I really like Flores. I would like Flores he's probably my top candidate. Maybe I'll give you guys my top candidate when we get through with the breakdown here. So again, Rod Wright, 41 years old, 4 years as a player with the Dolphins. Next on the list, Jamar Cain, 46 years old, no experience, no NFL experience. Their scheme that he's been a part of is a multiple scheme. And then rounding out the list is Addison Lynch, 36 years old, no experience at college or pro, 34/multiple front defense, and was not a former player. So if I were to go through this list, gang, and go, okay, who's my favorite just on the surface here, okay? Listen, Sean McDermott sounds good. I mean, you're talking about a guy who has 9 years experience as a head coach and 8 years as a defensive coordinator. Now, he may want to take the year off too, right? That could happen. I'm sure that he can go sit at home and get paid for it anyway, take a year off. Sometimes these former head coaches or these head coaches that are fired, like Mike McCarthy did, take a year off and then hit the next hiring cycle, right? So that could happen as well. Keep that in mind. Raheem Morris, I'm not as interested in, other than the fact that he is so familiar with the Shanahan tree, and they have had a lot of success with him as a DC and the multiple stops he's had. I do not put any stock in the head coaching result there and that defense down there in Atlanta. I look at it more of, okay, what did he do as a DC? I love the head coaching experience. Brian Flores, like I said, probably my top choice. So if we go outside of the building, let's say we can't pick Derek Ansley or DeMarcus Covington, not that I would pick one of those two over any of these guys. My top three candidates, the way I'm sitting right now, outside of the building, okay, would be, I would want to get Sean McDermott in here. I would want to get Brian Flores in here, and I would want to get Jim Leonhard in here if Jim Leonhard's interested in the defensive coordinator spot and Vance Joseph does not get hired and he gets promoted. Those would be the three, with probably Raheem Morris coming in fourth, okay? Now, if you made me include Derek Ansley and Coach Covington, it's tough. Seeing that Coach Covington has garnered more attention, you really get to pick if you want to keep one of those two, though. You know, you really do. Man, it's tough because both of them, when they were defensive coordinators, they have no head coaching experience. When they were defensive coordinators, both of their defenses struggled. Brandon Staley's defense, which Derek Ansley was the coordinator for out there with the Chargers, they weren't very good. I mean, he got fired pretty quick. Staley did. And DeMarcus Covington, same thing with Gerard Mayo. So those are kind of the same two players, the same two guys, coaches, right? Honestly, I wouldn't promote from within. I don't think I would. I think I'd go outside of the building. Now, there's pros and cons to that, as I'm sitting here kind of spitballing this on the fly here. If you bring in someone else, you got to change the scheme. Now, is a defensive scheme change as massive as, say, an offensive scheme? No, it's not. It's really not. But at the same time, it's like, what if you pass up on the next Jeff Hafley because we don't want to bring somebody in from outside of the building. Let me put it this way. When they fired Joe Barry, imagine if they had hired from within, right? If they had just hired from within, then we would have never found Jeff Hafley and we never would have had that top 10 defense. So it's tough. It's a tough decision. But again, those are my choices. If I gave you a top 5 in no particular order, like, hey, here are the 5 defensive coordinator candidates that I would bring in to interview: Sean McDermott, Raheem Morris, Brian Flores, and definitely Jim Leonhard. Those would be my 4 I would bring in. And if I had to choose between Derek Ansley and Coach Covington, I would probably go with Ansley, because Ansley has those Alabama ties and helped coach both Xavier McKinney and Trayvon Diggs in Alabama. He also has that Alabama tie to Josh Jacobs. And maybe you keep a little bit of that cohesion, if you will, and you let DeMarcus Covington walk. I think that would be more along those lines. Now, if you let DeMarcus Covington walk, then you better go out and get a great young defensive line mind. Because here's the thing. I'm almost 99% sure that Coach Ogabasi, the assistant defensive line coach, is going to go with Hafley. He came to Green Bay from Boston College with Hafley. I imagine Hafley will take him with him. What I'm hoping for, me personally, I'm hoping that Hafley actually chooses Ogabasi as his defensive coordinator. If he does that, then guess what? We might get to keep both DeMarcus Covington and Derek Ansley. That would be excellent. Imagine you get to keep everything intact in your defensive room for the most part, and then bring in a Brian Flores or a Sean McDermott or a Raheem Morris or even a Jim Leonhard. So I gave you one young one, right? Jim Leonhard. It's exciting, man. And again, I was kind of standoffish on Jim Leonhard in that 2021 cycle, right? But now he's got NFL experience. Looks pretty good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not of the opinion I wish we'd have hired him back then or he would have accepted that job, because if he had, I don't think he would have had the success that Jeff Hafley had. Everything was just like a perfect blend last year, right? And even into this year before all the injuries took place. So going to be really interesting to see how this all unfolds. I'm curious to know what the chat thinks. Everybody in the chat, do me a big favor. Don't give me a reason. Damn, Donovan. Damn, let me mark that. Don't give me a reason, just the name. Who is your top choice? If you had to pick from this list of 15 right here, just keep it in the top 10, since that's pretty much all I can keep on the screen. Who is your choice as DC? Just give me the name. Don't give me a reason. Give me the name in the comments. I want to make sure you guys are involved in this, and we'll wrap up. Who is the DC that you would choose? I know what mine is. It's Coach Lynn, baby. It's Coach Lynn. All right, here we go. We got him coming in. And first of all, I got to give a shout out to Donovan here. He says, #fire Jim Leonhard already. You know it's coming. You know it's coming, Donovan. It's right around the corner. Let's go through the chat and see what everybody thinks real quick. J. Cole says Flores. Got it, bud. I'm with you there, man. Let's see what else we got here. Cheese Guy says Flores. Fishy Things is on the Jim Leonhard train. I love it. We got Pip Doc, if I'm saying that right. He says Flores, or she says Flores. I apologize. Bucky Badger Flores. Packer Doug says Al Harris. So Packer Doug is obviously my wife Mandy's burner account. She wants Al Harris too. Here's the problem I got with that. The Bears defense was cheeks this year, okay? They were ranked in the bottom 5 in both pass defense and rush defense. If it hadn't been for the turnovers, I think they were bottom 10 in scoring defense. If it hadn't been for the turnovers, hey, all bets would have been off. So if we're going to credit Al Harris completely, that he's the reason that they got the turnovers, then we've also got to criticize him and give him all the blame for the passing defense and the rushing defense being so bad this year, right? So that's kind of how I see that. Donovan Schilling says Al Harris. Sorry, Clay. So there's 2 for Al Harris. Love it. Look, I ain't going to lie. If you could convince me he would be a good DC, he has no defensive coordinator experience, so that's kind of a knock against him too. There would be nothing that would bring me more joy than Al Harris standing on that sideline as a defensive coordinator, as long as the defense dominates, right? This is kind of like with Jim Leonhard before. I'm looking at Al Harris going, all right, he doesn't have, any defensive coordinator experience, which if their numbers hadn't been that bad this year, I would be a little more open to it. But man, that Bears defense was bad, guys. Bad, really, really bad. And some would say that Jalen Johnson's one of the best corners in the game, right? Some would say, I think top 10. He led the league in interceptions a few years ago. His PFF grade, he was the second highest graded cornerback in the league with the PFF grade as well. So, yeah. Moving along here, George in the chat says Flores. Stephanie says Flores. Tony Holman says Flores. Sean Mulhall says Flores. Bates says Flores. Mike Hebring says, I want Leonhard. I like it. You got to be kidding me, says Leonhard. T. Taylor says Brian Flores. Cheesehead Murph says, I thought Al Harris too. So he's on the Al Harris train. Love it. Caterpillar says, hire Joe Barry. Just kidding. All right, you knucklehead. Get out of here. Now, here's the name that we didn't mention that wasn't on the top 15 list. Awaken Now Humanity said Christian Parker. That's a guy that was on the short list for Matt LaFleur before, right? I want to say, I can't remember where he went. Was it maybe Washington? Wherever he was, the defense was bad. That was a name I kind of ran through the filter, and their rankings were pretty bad. Doesn't mean he would be a bad DC, but again, I'm trying to narrow it down to some of the top 15 that I liked, all right? Dwight Manship, all right, says Raheem Morris. Robert says Raheem Morris. Coach Lynn says McDermott. We need another head coach on set. See, that's the thing, Coach. We're all getting excited, myself included, about maybe the potential of Jim Leonhard. Is he a young, great coach? Brian Flores is younger and did this and that, right? You've got a guy who's got 9 years coaching experience. And what was the problem this year with the roster? What was the problem with the defense? Mistakes. Penalties, blown assignments, all those things, right? Youngest roster in the league. Imagine if we come back with, say, the 5th youngest roster in the league, right? We're around the 5 spot in terms of the youngest roster. So we get some veteran help in, and you hire a former head coach as your DC. I could see that. That would be like the best way to attack the problems that we've seen with the 25-point debacle, right, there against the Bears in the playoffs. So Chester Marcole says McDermott. Rick Schaefer says Flores. Zach says Morris. Zach Morris, you get it? Zach Will says Morris. Drew D says Jim Leonhard. What's up? All right, like it, Drew. Al Harris says D.O. I'm just going to say D.O. All right. Nessie says, what about Harris? Several people want Harris. She said Murph says Flores. We got McDermott. We got Saleh. Now, here's the problem with Saleh. Zeds. Saleh is currently under contract as defensive coordinator for the 49ers. So if he doesn't get a head coaching job, we cannot hire him as DC unless the 49ers decide to just let him walk, okay? And I got to wrap up here soon. I probably won't get to read them all. Appreciate y'all. Let me know your takes in here. Katsu says, bring back Joe Barry. I don't think you're being serious. Jonathan Bear says Flores. All right. Caterpillar says Flores or Leonhard. I like them both. I'd be okay with both. Cannonball Capel said, I think it's Cannonball John, says Flores. The Freedom House says Leonhard. Jonathan Boyer, I'm sorry. Flores, but realistically, Jim Leonhard, right? Flores is probably not going to be available too. But again, I like the way this one's listed here. Dark Arts Poker says number 1 Leonhard, 2 Flores, 3 Covington, 4 McDermott. Okay. I would honestly be okay with any of those. I think I would. Well, I've kind of told you what my take would be. I would want Flores over Leonhard, but if Leonhard's your top choice, I can get excited about it, man. I can. I can. All right, let me hit the super chat. We got to wrap up, guys. I'm so sorry. I went way over. We got a national championship to watch here in about an hour or so. H.E. Soder with the super. Thank you so much, buddy. He says, we got several supers. I'm sorry. Let me hit these real quick. Soder says, is the DC hire more important or how the hire fills out the staff? See, that's a great question, Soder. You're only as good as your tools. And in this case, your tools are going to be your assistants, right? Is the DC hire more important or how the hire fills out the staff? Like, meaning you may hire a little bit lesser of a DC, but if they're a little bit better at filling the staff, which I think that kind of makes how good a defensive coordinator is, right? The play calling, the scheme, and obviously the people he puts in place. I think DC, because if it truly is a good DC, he's going to hire a good staff, right? Hopefully that answers your question. Mike Witt with the super chat. Now that the Texans are done, just hire someone on the Texans staff and go from there. I wish I had specified which of these candidates were with the Texans, the Broncos, or the Seahawks. I just threw this together real quick as soon as we heard the news that Jeff Hafley did or is getting the job in Miami. I'm with you, man. The Texans look good, but I'm telling you right now, man, Seattle's defense, boy, and I know the 49ers are banged up. It's funny how they get the excuse, but we don't, right? It's amazing how that works in the fandom. But I think if I got to choose, I would want somebody from the Seattle defense first, then Houston, then Denver, personally. If all things were equal, right, it was, let's say Brian Flores, the same exact DC, but he was just coming fresh off Seattle, Houston, or Denver, I would want it to be fresh off of Seattle, me personally. I think they ranked first in scoring defense and total yardage. Houston was second. Denver was third, if I remember correctly. So I understand, though, man, the Texans defense is fun to watch. Really, really fun to watch. So thank you for that, Mike. Late Night Alum says Flores 1, then Morris, McDermott, and Schwartz. Go Pack, go. Schwartz is an interesting one, right? I think he's got head coaching interviews. So Cleveland, that's a really interesting one. I didn't even think about Schwartz. So if you guys correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, Jim Schwartz was the defense coordinator for the Cleveland Browns. Kevin Stefanski gets fired. I think he's still technically under contract with the Browns, so there's a chance he could stay on staff. So I don't think you could hire him if they want to keep him on DC. But most of the time when you hire a new head coach, they want to bring in their own defense coordinator, right? In some cases, they'll hire someone outside. They'll go, hey, yeah, we want to keep him. He's actually one of the better coordinators. I guess what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't be surprised if Schwartz stays the DC in Cleveland, although he may end up being the head coach. Who knows, right? And that would be what his second stint as a head coach. He was the head coach in Detroit, and that was an absolute debacle, obviously. But so again, Late Night Alum says Morris, McDermott, and Schwartz. Appreciate the super chat, buddy. Last one, Caterpillar with the super chat. Thank you so much. Save this for another day if you need, but is Jim Schwartz actually available? And if so, what do you think about him? I'd like to see him with Micah. Hopefully I just answered your question, Caterpillar. And thank you for that super chat. You're always all you guys are way too generous to the channel. We greatly appreciate it. But yeah, that would be fun to see him with Micah for sure. I'd be okay with Jim Schwartz as DC. I just don't think it's going to be possible to get him into Green Bay. Right. So, yeah, I know this, man. This is going to happen quick. Watch the news start to drop now of all the interviews coming in for the Packers DC position. I think you're going to see several interviews. There'll be some in-house interviews as well. It's going to be a lot of fun kind of diving into everything and seeing how everything unfolds. So really, really appreciate everybody jumping in here. Got a bunch of folks in here watching. Thank y'all so much. If you would, do us a big favor. Hit like, hit subscribe, click the bell icon so you know when we go live in the future. You may be going, what the hell is this? What did I stumble onto? This is PTA. We do daily live streams, just Packer fans getting together and talking ball. So if you're looking for that type of stuff, just make sure you sub to the channel. And also, everybody, if you're watching this back later, let us know in the comments, how do you feel about these candidates? Maybe you got a candidate outside of that list like an Al Harris that you would rather see. We want to hear from you in the comments. Let us know what you think in there. And we will be back tomorrow for PTA Live, probably a morning show, probably an afternoon show. This thing's going to heat up big time when we get to fill out this coaching staff. And in the meantime, we're going to start to dive into Aaron Banks. Do we want him to be back at $24.8 million against the cap? We're going to talk about how you can do a post-June 1 cut and free up way more than just the $4 million if you cut him outright this year. And we'll talk about the salary cap ramifications that go along with that. That'll be on tomorrow's show at some point for sure. So with that being said, we're out of here. Everybody hit that like button. Spin them laces on that football icon. My name's Clayton. This is PTA. Go Pack, go.
Here we go.
We're out.
Bye, guys.